Hello, and welcome to the Published Club. I'm your host, Chris Kendall, founder of the Published Club and managing editor of Surrendered Press. Thank you for joining us today as we explore new books written by an author that might be new to you, but could very well become one of your favorites. If you're a new or aspiring author and would like to become a member of the Published Club, please visit thepublishedclub.com for author services that can remove some of the non-writing details off your plate so you can focus on getting your book finished and into the hands of the readers that are waiting for it. And if you're a reader, I hope you'll check out this new book that we're going to share with you today. So we'll go ahead and get started. Today, my guest is Annalisa Simea. Annalisa, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
So tell us a little bit about your book and what you're working on.
Sure. So I'm a writing coach and I help writers to finish novels, traditionally published novels, and live the author lifestyle. And as I've been doing this, what I discovered is that there are a lot of books out there that will tell you how to write a novel, and they're very step by step, or the snowflake method, or I don't know, the sledding down the hill method, whatever it is. There are lots of them that are very procedural. But what was missing that I could see were for people who identify themselves as pantsers, people who fly by the seat of their pants. So they might write chapter 3 and then chapter 1 and then this character vignette, and they don't know where it goes, but they're a little bit all over the place. And the standard wisdom that many of these writers would get at writing conferences or writing workshops is just write an outline. What's the big deal? And it just didn't really work for these writers. And they were really yearning for a place where they could be the writer that they are and also flourish without being forced into something like an outline or a bullet list or some kind of prescribed method. And so way back in 2017, I wrote really the first book about how to be a pantser and write a novel and write it well. And I'm excited to say that it's been so popular that we're going into a second edition this year. So that will launch later this year. And the feedback, Chris, has really been that people feel really understood, that for the first time, somebody gets how they write, and not only gets how they write, but helps them to be their best writer, even if, and I say even if because so many conferences and things make them feel like there's something wrong with them when there's not. It's just it's a legitimate way of writing. This is their way of writing. And so that's been a great joy for me to share some methodology on how you can be a bit chaotic in your writing, but also find some order and finish your book.
As a pantser myself, it never really occurred to me that there could be some prescribed method to the madness, and I love that that exists, and I'm definitely gonna have to check that out because yeah, I get it. It's hard to like see everything linear sometimes, but it's also hard to just keep going when you don't exactly know what's next, or where you kind of forget what you've already done. Is it all in your head? Did you put it on paper yet? Like, definitely chaotic.
Exactly. And, I studied neuroscience and really how to dig into what the intersection of creativity and neuroscience is. So, how to optimize your brain. And you're exactly right, Chris. It's not a linear process for these pantsers. And sometimes exactly what you're saying, like, wait, did I already write about that? Or did I already write a scene like that? Or where did I think my character was going? Like, all of those things happen. How do we find the order in the chaos without over ordering it? Because as you may know, as a pantser, when pantsers over order, their creativity, packs its bags and goes on vacation. It doesn't want to play anymore. So there's got to be this intersection, this cooperation between creativity and enough order to finish a novel and finish it effectively.
Okay, and what was the name of your book?
So it's called Storytelling for Pantsers: How to Write and Revise Your Novel Without an Outline. It's available at bookstores all over the world and also, of course, on Amazon. And it does have an accompanying workbook, which will walk you through some of the writing exercises that are in the book.
Okay, so you mentioned that primarily you're working with traditionally published authors. Will this method work for an indie author as well?
It will work for anybody who wants to tell a good story. So it doesn't really matter who your audience is, how you want to publish, or even if you're writing memoir or even perhaps creative nonfiction, if you're looking to tell it in a narrative style. And that's why I chose storytelling for Pantsers as the title, is because it's really about how do we tell good stories in a way that functions in a linear pacing for the reader, for the receiver, but that works with our wonky brains that jump all over the place.
For sure. So would you say that the workshop or the workbook is really necessary or pretty important to helping kind of do that organization, or can somebody just pick up the book and get it?
But certainly the book will help as you get it. And, I am never the person to suggest a one size fits all solution. I put together the workbook for people who needed that level of support. If you wanted to parse it out in a notebook on your own or the back of a shopping receipt, you certainly could do that too. Let pantsers be pantsers, but it's there to be a useful resource guide for people who can use that support.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking like I can think of like five friends that I could buy this for as a gift, whether it's Mother's Day or their birthday. The book and the workbook sound like extremely helpful tools for all writers, and maybe even people who do creative writing for their job. Like I come from a marketing background, and that copywriting and that now all marketing is around storytelling, and so I can imagine that maybe this would even be useful in that type of setting. So yeah, that's really cool. All right, and so are is this your only book, or do you have other books?
So I have been writing for, I mean, like most writers, since I could hold a crayon, a pencil in my hand. I published my first poem when I was 9 years old. And I've been writing ever since. I've had the writing bug. I've written for television. I was in the White House press pool. So writing and publishing are really in my blood. Storytelling for Pantsers and its accompanying workbook is one of my nonfiction works. Another nonfiction work that came out this year was a history of arts and entertainment in New Hampshire, a very, very specific niche work that I was commissioned to do. And there are I'm not going to spill any beans or spoil anything, jinx anything, but there are a couple of fiction works slated to come out next year that I'm in the works with my literary agent on. So excited
Ooh,
about.
exciting. And do you publish your fiction under your same name, or do you use a pen name?
Yes, and what readers may see out there is the first edition was published under my previous name, and so part of the second edition, in addition to adding more great content, is that I get to update my name on the cover. So if you see Annalisa Parent out there on the cover of a book, it's still me. That's just my previous name. So it has been updated and will be updated in the second edition.
Okay, so if I want to buy it today, Storytelling for Pantsers by Annalisa Parent?
Parent, like your mom or your dad.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, so
that
that's what we
that will
look
be the
for.
name that's on the cover. That's right. That's right.
Okay, but and when does the second edition release?
So we're looking for the second half of the year. This year is the production schedule for that with the publisher.
Okay, all right. So later in the year, if I'm buying this as a holiday gift, then I'll look for Sumaya.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Either
perfect,
way, if
perfect.
you
I think I
search
got
by
it.
title, you should be fine.
Yes, excellent. Okay, all right. We won't worry that somebody's plagiarizing your book. That we'll know that it's still you. Well, do you have any advice, like just one tip for pantsers that might, number one, help them today, but also make them feel like they need to get the book to get all the rest of the advice?
I think the biggest piece of advice that I have isn't necessarily a tip or a trick because I don't really believe in hacks, right? I mean, in life, sometimes there are like cool laundry hacks that we can find that are actually hacks, but life doesn't have a whole lot of hacks. And I don't think that writing has a whole lot of hacks. If there is one, and if there's one big tip that I can give, it's that whoever the writer is that you are, is the very best writer that you can be. And learning to work with your brain instead of against your brain is the very best thing that you can do for yourself. So if you've been struggling with the XYZ model or the ABC method, and you just find yourself tearing your hair out, hating writing, wondering why you didn't take up crocheting instead. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. You really can fall in love with your writing and find that creative flow that we all love so much because it feels like our childhood play when you work with your brain. And for that exact reason, the first major chapter in the book is all about neuroscience and how to work with your brain instead of against it. Now, there are some amazingly insightful and wonderful writing tips in the book as well. Of course, I think that they're mine. Uh, However, I would say that learning to work with your brain instead of against it and really accepting the writer that you are. And I'm saying that to you, Chris, because so many writers, I speak at giant writing conferences all over the world throughout the year. And many writers come to me and it's almost like a confessional that they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm a pantser. Is that okay?" Because somebody in their past has told them like, "No, you can't write that way. Real authors don't do that." And there's no such thing as real authors don't do that. There just isn't. So stop it, everyone, and all the people who are giving that really bad advice. If that were true, then we wouldn't have the amazing canon of literature that we do. Not one of those writers used the same method. They all wrote wonderful books that we're still talking about hundreds of years later. So let's let writers be who they are and help them to find their wonderful gifts where they lie, because you all have wonderful gifts. Let's find them, use them, and build out an even better toolbox.
So many people need to hear that. They need that reminder. I agree with you completely that there's so much bad advice. I'm in a lot of these Facebook groups with like writers helping writers and stuff. And it just makes me cringe when somebody asks a simple question and there's 20 people like, you must do it this way. You cannot do it that way. You have to have this. You did it. I'm just like, oh my God. Do you make $1 selling books? Because I don't believe you do. I like you do not know what you're talking about at all. Um, so yes, I love that. Just like be who you are and do it your way because that's the only way that's going to work for you. Trying to fit into someone else's mold is never going to work. And just having that permission from somebody who has done it successfully and is making it work is really what so many of us just need permission to be who we are.
Yeah, and I call those groups the blind leading the blind because it feels like who's running the circus, what's going on here. The advice in general isn't helpful and many times is actually harmful and
It is
really
harmful.
harmful to your brain because if somebody says no, you're doing it wrong, use this XYZ method, this is what worked for me, this is the only way to do it, and that particular writer is then working against their brain, then not only have we given unhelpful advice, but we've set them back. And I will say that in my writing coaching, sometimes I have to take somebody from 3 or 10 or 20 steps back that they took because of bad advice in a writing group or some workshop that they took or some editor who said no, this is the only way to write. And the tragedy about that, Chris, is that not only has the writing taken a step back, but their self-esteem, the way they feel about themselves and acknowledging their beautiful gifts that they have to give to the world. No one looked at that and said, let's take what you have and make it better. They just said, no, you can't be like that. You have to be a something else. And well, that doesn't work. That's
Yeah.
not that's not a viable solution. So I'm so glad that you brought that up about, other Facebook groups. Over in my Facebook group, it's supportive. We don't do any of that blind leading the blind. And I feel really committed. I have a podcast as well. I love podcasts. And I'm speaking to industry professionals all of the time so that my listeners and my authors are getting information straight from the publishing industry. It's not like, gee, here's my opinion. Cares about my opinion? It doesn't matter. Let's get it straight from the horse's mouth so we don't end up in that blind leading the blind situation. And we're really looking at data to make decisions. And some of the data is who are you already as an author? And some of the data is what's working in the publishing industry or what are readers interested in and what are people selling? Let's look at the data and make wise decisions, not make a decision because somebody likes this method better than that method or likes this kind of opening better than that kind of opening. Those are just opinions.
Yes, for sure. All right. So if somebody wants to join your Facebook group or listen to your podcast, how do they find you?
Yeah, so my Facebook group is called Write to Publish and Sell Your Novel. And we welcome all writers who are looking to tell good stories. And my podcast, going into season 7 this year, is called the Writing Gym Podcast. Gym, like where you work out with weights and such. And it's available anywhere that you can find podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, the whole kit and caboodle.
I'm definitely going to subscribe myself. All right. Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you today, Annalisa. I'm going to be looking for your book. And like I said, I'm pretty sure it's going to be at the top of my gift list for some of my writing friends. So I will be handing out paperbacks this year. So thank you again for joining.
Thank you for having me, Chris. It's been a pleasure speaking with you about writing and about this book.
Awesome. All right. And so for everyone else listening and joining on YouTube, thank you so much. I hope you'll come back next time when we learn about other great books that might end up at the top of your to be read list. So until next time, keep reading.